Last August, the federal government announced an independent inquiry into Canada's missing and murdered Indigenous women. But with just 2 months now before testimony is finally heard, the inquiry says privacy and process issues mean that families of fewer than 100 of the missing women are in the database. A report by the RCMP back in 2014 had identified nearly 1,200 Indigenous women and girls who have disappeared or were killed, with many people saying those numbers are possibly even higher. So why does the inquiry cover so few cases? Joining us to look into this is Christa Canoe. She is the Commissioner's Counsel for the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls Inquiry. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, let's start there. Why are these numbers so low of families involved?
Well, the numbers actually are indicating only families, not the actual list. So the National Inquiry is well aware of the numbers and a number of databases that list the missing and murdered Indigenous women. The list that we currently have is over 100, around 115 now, of families that would be testifying in the National Inquiry.
Again, though, that number seems so low. It's around 10%, and there was such an outcry and such an outpouring for this inquiry. Why are there not more names?
There are not more names yet on the list because we're asking family members or the Indigenous women and girls who have experienced violence to contact the National Inquiry. We're doing that for a couple of reasons. The information we received has a list of attendees to the pre-inquiry, but not all of their contact information due to privacy concerns. And another reason is because participation in the inquiry is voluntary for families to tell their story. So we're now asking families to reach out and contact us so that we have the opportunity to add them to the growing list.
As someone sitting outside the inquiry, I look at that and say, why put the onus then on victims' families to come forward? Why aren't we going after them?
Well, part of the process is that families want to participate. And there's a number of families that we've heard from our family advisory circle who have explained that they want their stories heard by the commissioners. But the process has to be engaged in with full voluntariness and not. We did not want to cold call or contact families or demand that they participate, but rather allow an array of options for their participation.
Are all of the families aware that they need to come forward, that they need to sign up in order to be heard at the inquiry?
And I think that's part of where there may have been some either miscommunication or misunderstanding, is a number of people that participated in the pre-inquiry may have been working under the assumption that their contact information would be simply handed to the National Inquiry, and that just simply wasn't the case.
For families who are new to inquiry process, it's not like a court case. As you mentioned, it is a voluntary issue. We had documentation handed over yesterday by Minister Carolyn Bennett. Will this improve things?
The inquiry had received a lot of documentation from INAC that included the list. There was not new information handed over. There's just the attendees lists contained in that original information.
All right. What do you think should be done then to improve the process?
Well, one of the focuses of the National Inquiry and the commissioners is to make sure we're vocalizing in different medias and different mechanisms because, for example, the Globe and Mail article that came out yesterday, not a lot of remote First Nation communities have access to Globe and Mail.
Right.
So we're taking some approaches that include radio spots in Indigenous languages, in English and French, as well as outreach in different formats so that we're covering the country.
So time is running out because we're going to start hearing some of these stories very soon. Do you think maybe then the inquiry should be held back to allow more families that time?
Well, the inquiry is being heard in 3 parts. So part 1 is the family information gathering hearings, and they'll be happening over a number of months. And so they'll be going across the country. And
so there's no deadline, like a cutoff deadline for people to sign up?
No, I mean, we obviously encourage people and families and victims of violence to contact the inquiry as soon as possible, but at the same time, there will be other means and mechanisms. So, for instance, some of the submissions that the inquiry will be receiving include art, such as stories and poetry. There will be closing submissions that will be much later in the process. And so there are multiple opportunities and ways for people to participate.
What were some of the reasons maybe that people in the community would feel like they don't want to come forward, that they don't want to share at the inquiry?
There may be legitimate safety concerns for individuals and communities to come forward where they're afraid to speak out, or some people just don't want to be in a public forum. Therefore, the Commission is allowing a number of things, such as publication bans to not allow the names to be published, or in-camera hearings, or for people who don't want to testify in that public sphere, there'll be trained staff taking statements from individuals or families.
Having read, over the last couple of years, some of these stories in papers like the Globe and Mail and others that have come forward, they are powerful, they are eye-opening, and this is a historic inquiry, so let's hope that you get all the voices that you need.
Yes, let's.
Thank you, Christa.
Thank you.
All right, Christa Big Canoe is the Commissioner's Counsel for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls National Inquiry. She's our guest this morning. If any family member wants to take part in this inquiry, you can go to our website. We will have all the details available for you. That's yourmorning.ca.